So I got an email from a viewer that asked me basically how do I select weapons for home defense situations if I'm in a country that has no guns or where guns are just not allowed. I think there's no country in the world where there are no guns, quote unquote. So I think where guns are not allowed is a better way to phrase that. Um, that's actually a really good question because in Canada and the United States, obviously the United States much more so. Everybody can have a gun. There are some restrictions here and there, but generally everybody can have a gun in their home. So it's not really an issue. In Canada, it's a little bit more difficult. So you can have a gun, there's no doubt about it, but you have to go through a little bit of hoops and hurdles in order to be able to acquire any type of firearm. And even to acquire license is not an easy thing to do. There's a bit of a process to go through there in order to achieve that. But it is definitely doable, and it's something which is doable within a few months of time. It's not like it's going to take you forever to do. So that being said, if you don't have the opportunity to get a firearm, what is it that you could possibly use in order to protect your home and protect your family in the situations of violence, home invasion, or whatever it happens, without having a firearm? There are basically three things which I would suggest. Number one thing is to have a proper setup. Make sure that your surroundings are set up properly, that you have maybe a gate, that you have an alarm system set up, that you are in a building, you go into a building where if you're capable to, of course, have a security door so people cannot just walk into your building, but maybe to have an access card or some other type of barriers to keep other people from the outside from easily coming in. So there must be some type of barriers. So you want to create that layered security. It can be a fence, it can be the cameras, it can be the security door if you're living in a condo. All these kind of things are layers of defense. So that's the first thing you want to do, to make sure that your environment is set up properly, that you're capable, of being in a secure environment. You don't want to be in a place where somebody can just walk up to the door, and if you forgot to close it, they can just open it and walk in. And that happens sometimes. So if you have a security door in your condominium, for example, even if you forgot to lock your door, you're not directly exposed to the outside environment where anybody can walk by and try the handle, and the door will open for them, and then they're in the magic kingdom. So that being said, number one thing is to have the environment set up properly. The number two thing is to make sure that you are trained. You see, you might not have a weapon, you might not have a gun or a knife or anything else or a sword or whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. The key thing is that you are trained, that you are the one who has the physical training of combat, some type of combat training skill that you've learned. In my case, it's pencak silat, which I've done my entire life. In your case, it might be something else. I suggest pencak silat because it's the number one thing, in my opinion, especially when it comes to real world problems and conflict and violence, especially with edged weapons. And also, if we translate to firearms as well, there are many benefits of pencak silat as well over other types of martial arts. That's my opinion. Again, it's very subjective to my own experiences in my life and my training. But that is my opinion. And what I think is that is the first thing. So you make sure that you are trained. And if you have that training and your training is done properly, then you'll also have the psychology in order to handle these type of situations. You'll also have a little bit of tactics. You'll also have a little bit of strategy in order to handle these types of situations properly. More effective than the average person would be able to handle if they had no training at all. Now, this, of course, depends on how far you're willing to go with this. If it's just a weekend seminar, that's a different thing. But likely, the third thing is to make sure that you have some type of weapon which you can access immediately, some type of physical combat weapon. In my case, in my home, I have a karambit and a short sword. And for all intents and purposes, in close quarter combat in the house, very few things can beat a shotgun or if you don't have a shotgun, a short sword. Both of them are very, very good tools. Some people would argue about the shotgun in the house. I tend to say that a shotgun is a great weapon because that's if you are trained in martial arts, I mean, because in close quarters, you're able to use it to fight, and also in range, you have a very high-powered weapon. So I would say in close quarter combat in a house, I would prefer a shotgun over a handgun in many cases. That is debatable again because some people again they think that the handgun is the superior weapon in close quarters, and that is debatable. For me personally, I find the shotgun is a better choice, and that's my personal opinion again. So if I didn't have that, the next thing on my list would be a short sword, and that's what I keep in my house. So the kind of short sword that I would keep is the one, again, it's the length of your hand. That's how you can measure it, okay? So it's the length of your hand. So if you put your hand out like this and you bend your arm in front of you, your sword, okay, should be that distance. So the tip of your index finger to your elbow. That is the distance that you require. Now, also, when you put it across this way on a horizontal plane, you'll see that it very easily can go through a door. You wouldn't have a problem entering a door. If you have something like a katana, it's very difficult to get through doors. It's not easy to fight. But with something like this, it's really easy to fight in close quarters. You have enough maneuverability and handability. Is that a word? Handability. But handability, anyways, regardless. But you have maneuverability with the weapon, so you can move around different places, okay? And also, if you have a good kind of sword, you can also use it in reverse grip, and that you see it's covering your elbow. So when you're doing elbowing techniques in close, when you're doing jabbing technique, you have a very, very functional weapon in close quarters combat. It doesn't have to be in the front grip, okay? Your sword does not need to be used in the front grip. It can be used in close quarters in the house in the reverse grip so that you're like this, so that you're covered on one part of your hand. So even if the person would have an impact weapon, you could use the blade in order to block the impact weapon and then come in for your attacks afterwards. So this would be my personal choice if I didn't have a shotgun, because the short sword has two good things about it, actually. Number one is that it gives you the distance, okay? And that's what you would like to have. That's a good thing about having a firearm. You can have distance from your adversary, but the same thing with the sword. You can create distance between you and the other person so you're able to attack them and they are not so easily able to attack you. For them, very few. And that is the second point. Very few people in the year 2024 understand how to deal with a sword. So you're introducing a weapon system from a previous time that none of the people that are going to be invading your home will understand how to beat. They will not know what to do when they see you with this. And if you know how to use your sword well in close quarters and you know how to fight with it properly, you will then be able to use your weapon system that other people have no idea how to counter, and you are an expert at it. That gives you a strategic advantage in the situation. Okay, so this is an excellent thing to do. So that's what you want to consider, in my opinion, because that is you're introducing something which is a surprise for an adversary, which is always good. You're introducing a strategic disadvantage for an adversary, tactical disadvantages for the adversary as they try to counter a weapon which they don't understand and have never seen or encountered in real life or even thought about fighting against. So you have a lot of advantages when you use a sword. Plus, of course, you have the advantage of it being long, and because it's a short sword and it's only the size of your arm length, well, half of your arm length, I guess, not counting the rest of it, you're able to maneuver very quickly inside of your home. So I find these are huge advantages when it comes to home defense using a short sword. And I prefer a sword which has a very acute tip, so it's very easy for me to go through any type of clothing, even if it's in wintertime, where people are wearing heavier clothing or layered clothing. It would not be an issue for me to go through that clothing with this type of a very acute tip. And that's what I like to have. I like very sharp tips. And the same thing on my karambit. My karambit, again, very sharp and acute tip. And that's exactly what I want. So that's my opinion about it. I hope that answers the question for the viewer. And I hope that is something of interest for other people. And if you have any questions about this or anything else related, feel free to ask. I am your humble servant and happy to answer anything you need. Salam pencak silat. See you again next week.